Have you ever wondered why accessing the bowling lanes at West Edmonton Mall feels so unusual?
There's this long, somewhat isolated feeling hallway. Not much more than beige walls with stripes.
But then, suddenly out of nowhere, aliens!
A display for an escape room, access to sport check, and an escalator up to the lanes themselves, which is only accessible some of the time. But continue down that hallway, and it's more of the same, until you reach a parking lot entrance and more stairs, again, leading up to the lanes. But why is it like this?
Wouldn't it make more sense to have the bowling lanes more directly connected to the mall concourse? Well, yeah, it would. And in fact, they once were.
Before the bowling, the pins, and pizza, before the cues, racks, and billiard balls, and far before the alien escape room and the karaoke, the story begins with the opening of West Edmonton Mall's Phase 3.
It's a zoo, it's an amusement park, and it's a shopping mall too. People go there for all sorts of reasons, and you can call it whatever you want. The West Edmonton Mall, already the biggest one in the world, just got bigger.
In 1985, West Edmonton Mall unveiled its largest ever expansion. Submarine rides, mini golf, lakes with pirate ships, and eventually, the world's largest indoor water park would elevate West Edmonton Mall to a first-of-its-kind worldwide phenomenon. The expansion also brought a huge collection of large retail anchor tenants. The Brick, London Drugs, Canadian Tire, Woodward's, and IKEA all opened at West Edmonton Mall with the expansion. Of these, only London Drugs remains in its original spot today. Actually, depending on your definition of anchor tenant, London Drugs stands alone as having stood the test of time at West Edmonton Mall. In fact, only it, and up until the chain's closing this year, the Bay, were the anchors still operating in their original 1980s locations. But what happens when major anchor tenants close? Well, even back in the golden era of brick and mortar retail, there were challenges bringing new large stores in to fill these vacated spots. Some were occupied by grocery stores, accompanied by reimagined themed streets. Others were converted into mall concourse, bringing in several smaller tenants in place of a single large one. Much later, others were updated into the world's largest in-mall car dealership. And in the case of a departing IKEA store at West Edmonton Mall, maybe, just maybe, an iconic billiard and bowling brand comes in to take on the space, and, in turn, transform it into an astonishingly well-themed entertainment destination. Brunswick as a company was founded in 1845. Its first products were horse carriages and billiard tables. Over the next century and a half, it became well regarded as one of the world's most established and iconic recreation brands. And in the late 1990s, alongside Strategic Leisure and of course West Edmonton Mall, they brought us Red's Rec Room. A 107,000 square foot multi-story entertainment venue offering a varied array of entertainment attractions and dining options. As you would expect, Brunswick would heavily showcase billiards and bowling, two of their core recreation-based business units. And though Red's was, at least in part, designed with the goal of highlighting these segments, the original Rec Room at West Edmonton Mall was a heck of a lot more. The entire concept was set around the conceived fictional character Red and his 1960s rumpus room. Red Wiley was the kind of guy every neighborhood had back then. The go-to fella who could fix just about anything. Always ready with a cold drink, a screwdriver, and a smile. Everyone in the neighborhood knew the Riley residence was a welcome spot, and the house quickly became the place to be on the block. Wife Betty would whip up a batch of her famous potato salad and then head down to the wood-paneled rec room. The whole gang would gather around for cold beer and a friendly game of 8-ball. The lingering scent of smoke mixed with the sound of laughter, good times, and a jukebox playing in the background. In the next room, wily kids Rusty and Betty kept the neighborhood children entertained. They'd spin 45s on their old Victrola, and holler with excitement at that fancy new electronic football game that Red picked up at Eaton's just last week. And the only difference between Wiley's family rumpus room and our own real-life version of that was, instead of being in a neighborhood basement, Red's rec room was found in the former IKEA location in Phase 3 of West Edmonton Mall.
Just another sampling of Red's, the entertainment center that opened here at West Edmonton Mall a month or so back. Great place to go. Kids, parents, everybody.
September 5th, 1996. Red's Rec Room was opening its doors. Laid out over 2 floors, the sprawling center cost $11 million to build. Accounting for inflation, that translates to nearly $20 million today. Red's had a lot to offer. When you walked in from the mall concourse, you'd find the first of its attractions, Red's Game Room. It wasn't quite the size of what came only a few years later at Palladium, but it was still an impressive arcade with over 80 games to choose from. All the classics were there, including a large collection of redemption games. You know, typical arcade stuff. But just like Palladium had with Maxilla, Red's Game Room also boasted a premium arcade attraction of its own, an NHL Goalie Simulator. Today, one of these exists at the Hockey Hall of Fame, but instead of today's virtual hockey players testing your skills between the pipes, Red's installation used pre-recorded footage of 2 of the best to ever play the game, Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. Just as the puck passed the frame, one of several small hinged covers on the screen would open up and deliver a softer but still fast-flying puck right at you, and you were supposed to stop it. It really was a fantastic attraction for hockey fans, but it was notoriously difficult.
Oh, I got that one. The only ones you stop are the ones that shoot too fast, you can't get out of the way.
Elsewhere on the lower floor of Red's, you'd find Red's Eats, a retro-themed restaurant serving everything you'd expect from a 1960s greasy spoon. The checkered floor and bright red seats, combined with Red's atmosphere and stylized couches, felt like a 60s diner blended with the lounging area of Red Wiley's own living room. The restaurant's menu was provided by the Ladies' Auxiliary of Red's regulars. And right next to Red's Eats was one of several of Red's bars, where you could hunker down for a pint, known by some locals as a Step 2. It was a long counter set up in front of a microbrewery. And there was another drinking establishment on the main floor as well, the Furnace Room. This one was restricted to adults only, because it allowed patrons to smoke. The late 1990s and early 2000s were the tail end of an era where local laws still allowed use of smoking tobacco at indoor public places. And toward the end of Red's tenure, I recall it being pretty much the last place you could still smoke in the mall, outside of a casino anyway. It was completely enclosed, but thank goodness in-mall smoking isn't allowed anymore. Seriously kids, don't smoke. It's gross, it's smelly, it's expensive, and it's really bad for you and those around you.
Now we know.
And knowing is half the battle.
G.I. Joe!
I was too young at the time to ever taste any of it, but Red's Rec Room also had its very own brews. There were 3 types of house beer: blonde, brunette, and of course, red. Actually, I want to pause here and talk about the branding for Red's, specifically Red Wiley. He was pretty widely used on promotional materials, and was easily recognized by his bright red hair, but he was largely portrayed in the same way as Wilson from the TV show Home Improvement, with a partially obscured face. There were some early newspaper ads which did show faces, but I'm not entirely convinced that any of these were supposed to be Red Wiley, just stock clip art meant to merely portray an old-fashioned look and feel. But whether Red was drinking, bowling, or dancing, you never got a great look at his face. Speaking of dancing, Red's Rec Room was also largely known as an entertainment venue, the main floor's other large attraction. I won't name them all, but there were a lot of recognizable names and faces which graced Red's stage. Despite its relatively smaller footprint and some criticism of sightlines and sound quality in the space, Red's stage quickly established itself as a well-rostered concert venue and maintained that reputation over the years. And in between the big shows, there was even a house band which regularly entertained guests. Venturing upstairs, you'd find the first of 2 products which Brunswick was best known for: billiards.
Went in there last night actually and got my
butt kicked by my 7-year-old in a game of pool, so that wasn't that good a thing.
With large windows overlooking the second floor viewing area of the concert venue below, Red's pool room boasted over 20 pool tables, including a full-size snooker table. This was a full-fledged pool hall. It featured its own bar as well, but if that wasn't good enough for you, you could always venture just outside the area to relax in the adjacent Bandana Cabana Lounge, a relaxed, full-service leisure area with a few more billiard tables. The Cabana Lounge was beautifully polished with a stylized bamboo sign, faux palm tree, and bowling pin bar stools. A shout out to what still exists today, and very well might have been considered back then, as the main attraction, Red's Lanes. Neon lights, disco balls, and energizing music all added to the atmosphere of the 28 10-pin lanes. There were, of course, cosmic bowling nights, blacklight glow nights, which are virtually a full-time offering at the lanes today.
Try some of that neon bowling.
I was watching it. It's a totally different.
It's also a lot more comfortable today. Back then, there were no plush, relaxed seating areas at each lane. Instead, there were tables with hard-backed swivel chairs. Still, the lanes have been a well-enjoyed attraction at the mall for decades. When Reds opened in 1996 under a 10-year, $15 million lease, it was a spectacle. West Edmonton Mall's original rec room offered a huge array of attractions, dining, and entertainment options. Upon opening, there was even a $3 cover charge to enter, though that didn't last very long. With its decor features, it was a place you wanted to spend some time. The theming was just so on point. I've already covered this plenty, but with the oversized bowling trophies, neon lights, wall-mounted furniture, and comically large moose heads, the whimsical look and feel made Reds a place you wanted to spend time at. It didn't matter where you were in the center, the atmosphere was far more than the sum of its parts. The signage, the mismatched furniture, the retro-themed elements. Alone, they'd be nice, but the way they put it all together, it really was something. When the Brunswick lease ended in 2006, West Edmonton Mall took over operations of the Rec Room. Statements from the mall indicated that the music stage was to be carved out as a separate venue, and the diner's full menu was to be scaled back somewhat. Still, the newly renamed Ed's Rec Room continued offering arcade, billiard, and bowling fun for several more years, until the area was revamped yet again. The mall concourse in front of the attraction, which overlooked the original Phase 3 food court below, was renovated into a large retail space. Combined with what was once the arcade, diner, and concert venue of Ed's, it was transformed for what exists as Sport Check today. But this left an outstanding issue. How would bowling-hungry mall patrons make it to the lanes, billiard tables, and eventually the escape room and karaoke upstairs? Well, that's why we have this long hallway, a small sliver of the original mall concourse. It was preserved and walled in to make this hallway, so that mall patrons had access to the parking lot entrance and the stairs up to the lanes above. The same entrance which has existed ever since the original Reds opened in 1996. So, the next time you're rolling on those neon-lit lanes at Ed's Bowling, stop and think back. Remember that before the interactive mini lanes of the Kingpin Suite, there lived the Bandana Cabana Lounge, decorated with mismatched furniture and bowling pin bar stools. Long before you were trying to escape a doomed space colony, there were those trying to stop Edmonton's best players from scoring a goal. And before you were belting out the lyrics yourself, some of the world's best performers were singing at West Edmonton Mall on Red Stage. Remember the retro greasy spoon style diner and the custom brews, the arcade, the dance floor, and that massive billiard hall. And how everything was tied together with neon lights, incredible atmosphere, and whimsical oversized decor. Remember Red Wiley and how West Edmonton Mall once had its very own rumpus room. Edmonton's original rec room. Remember Reds. I vividly remember running back and forth between Palladium and Reds. Which was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, and consider supporting my content on Patreon. And keep watching my other videos, mostly about the greatest indoor show on earth, West Edmonton Mall. Oh, and thanks for watching.